Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Lynden Library tonight to the Whatcom County Council's Criminal Justice and Public Safety meeting. We're here, this is a listening tour, so we're here to get your views on criminal justice and the jail issues here in Whatcom County. And we're going to start out to show you a quick little video, kind of goes over some timeline stuff, and then we'll get started. So thanks again for everybody coming out tonight.
Hello, everyone. I'm Barry Buchanan, Chair of the Whatcom County Council's Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee, and I want to welcome you to the 2018 Listening Tour. We're reaching out to residents of Whatcom County to get your thoughts on our criminal justice system. Tonight, we will present an overview of where we are today and a timeline of events leading up to now. However, the main focus of tonight's meeting is to gather your input, so let's get started. The Whatcom County Jail was built in 1949 and until 1983 was located on the 6th floor of the county courthouse. In the early 80s, the State Jail Commission funded construction of the current correctional facility located next to the courthouse in downtown Bellingham, and the jail was completed and occupied in 1984. Over the next 2 decades, the county took numerous steps to enhance its criminal justice system, including creation of a jail alternatives program, establishment of a law and justice council, establishment of a blue ribbon panel on criminal justice and public safety needs, establishment of a drug court, expansion of the jail alternatives program and facility to include more beds and divert more offenders from full custody, adoption of an ordinance imposing 0.1% sales tax for criminal justice purposes, and passage of a voter-approved sales tax increase of 0.1% with part of the funding proposed for a new jail project and part for construction and operation of a temporary interim minimum security work center. In 2006, the minimum security interim work center opened and planning for a new jail began in earnest. Over the next few years, money was appropriated to fund a jail site selection process, facilities planning, and preparation of studies necessary to locate a new jail in Whatcom County. A jail planning task force was formed, and the hard work of this group resulted in recommendations for tangible next steps in development of a new jail proposal. In January of 2013, the county purchased approximately 40 acres on La Bounty Road in Ferndale as the proposed site for a new jail, and in the fall of 2014, Council approved a contract with DLR Group for design and engineering services. The Council approved a recommendation for the county executive to move forward with jail planning by hiring a professional jail planner and identifying parcels of land that could support siting of a horizontally designed jail. In 2015, the Council established the Incarceration Prevention and Reduction Task Force to study ways to prevent and reduce incarceration in Whatcom County. That same month, the Council approved a resolution to place a measure on the general election ballot for 0.2% sales tax increase to fund a new jail at the La Bounty Road site. In November 2015, Whatcom County voters rejected the ballot measure. Over the next 2 years, the county secured a jail facilities use agreement with other Whatcom County jurisdictions, and the County Council held a public hearing to gather citizen input on jail size. The Incarceration Prevention and Reduction Task Force worked diligently to prepare recommendations for safely and effectively reducing incarceration of individuals struggling with mental illness and chemical dependency, and also to minimize jail utilization by pretrial defendants who can safely be released. In July 2017, the County Council adopted an ordinance to place another measure on the general election ballot for 0.2% sales tax increase to fund costs associated with financing, construction, maintenance, and operation of jail facilities and incarceration prevention programs, including medical and behavioral health facilities and programs. In November of 2017, Whatcom County voters rejected the ballot measure. So, that brings us to where we are today. The County Council formed this committee to ensure thorough study and review of criminal justice and public safety. Our first priority is to reach out to the community and give citizens the chance to provide input and ideas for enhancing public safety and criminal justice in Whatcom County. Our process going forward will be to compile the data from these listening sessions and work with the Incarceration, Prevention, and Reduction Task Force to begin Phase 2, a needs assessment. The needs assessment will address who should be in our jail, where the jail should be located, a capital and operating budget, and what is the right size jail for Whatcom County. Once the needs assessment is complete, we will begin Phase 3, which is the facility planning process. The committee appreciates you coming out tonight and sharing your views with us about criminal justice in Whatcom County.
Well, thanks again for everybody coming out tonight. I'm going to turn this over to our facilitator, Holly O'Neill, and she's going to guide us through our listening session.
Thank you, Greg. So welcome, everybody. Glad that you made it out. My name is Holly O'Neill, and I was asked to come and facilitate tonight's session. I want to start by thanking our council members, Buchanan, Sidhu, and Bird, and also recognize that we have our county executive, Jack Laus, in the audience. Thank you so much for coming. And Sheriff Elfo is joining us tonight as well, which I appreciate. So we have from now until 8:45, because we have to get out of here sharp. This is a library that closes on time. So we'll be getting out of here and putting away our chairs right about 8:45. And until then, our goal for tonight is to hear from all of you what your thoughts are about why the last jail proposal failed and what kind of a recommendation would make sense to you. What would be a better solution? So your concerns and your hopes for a better solution is really what we want to hear today. And the way that we're going to run the session is that I'm basically going to give you all a chance to speak. We'll be using the microphone because the session is being recorded, so we want to make sure that we can hear y'all. And I think we'll see how it goes with giving everybody about 3 minutes. And Genevieve here will do some timekeeping for you. And then, we may, as time allows, have some time for some back and forth so that we can also open it up for a little bit of dialogue. But most importantly, we really just want to hear from each of you. So you are number 2 in the listening sessions. We've been to Deming. It was amazing. Oh my gosh, it was so much fun. Yes, a couple of you were there. Oh my gosh, what fun in Deming. Now we're in Lynden, and then after that we have 6 more sessions. So you guys are number 2. At the end of hearing from each of these listening sessions, Marty and I, my colleague, are going to prepare a report that summarizes here are the main findings, and that report will be available online. So you'll be able to see, what folks had to say for general themes. So again, here's what we're going to do. You're going to raise hands to speak. I'll pass you the mic. Take about 3 minutes. I want to say there's no wrong answers here. Like you have the right to your own opinion and your own perspective. However, I do ask 2 things. One, that you please try and stay on topic. Stay within the general thing we're talking about. And that, of course, we want to really maintain an atmosphere of courtesy and respect. Because, it's okay that we have different opinions on these topics, and we can still speak in a way that honors each other. So that's the plan. Do you have any questions before we begin? Is there anything important I've missed? Oh, bathrooms, right? You find those right across the hall. So if at any point you need to stand up and just, stretch and use the bathroom, it's fine. Yeah.
Do all of the comments that have come in by email, by phone, over the course of the last 10 years get entered into this data set? We have all made many opinions and ideas.
So to be...
Where do they go?
Right, that's a good question, and I'm going to let somebody who knows the answer. So, I would just be winging it, so I'm going to just ask you guys, where are all comments held in general?
Well, we have all those comments available, obviously, and those will be certainly taken into consideration. This session is designed specifically to going from this point forward after we've been through 2 ballot measures and to try to get a sense from the public what they think those ballot measures had to offer that they did like or that they didn't like. So we're just trying to move from this point forward.
That makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions before we get started? Okay, so then to hear from you. What were your concerns? What are your hopes for better solutions? Anything that you feel like is really important for the council members to hear on this topic? It's ready to start. You want me to call on someone, or we can go to straws? You know I'm going to call on someone eventually, right? So now's the point when you all look down. Try to not look at me. I was like, we'll call it. You ready? Sure. Great, thanks.
Well, state your name for the record, too.
Oh, thank you.
My name is Alice Whatcom, and I live in Lynden. And I just think that there is so much going on right now on the trends that we've had the last year of increasing incarceration for longer times, for more things. But there are a lot of studies and examples of how there are so many better ways to treat people that are, for some reason, are having problems. And I think if we're going to come up with the best solution for our money, for our people that have found themselves somehow in trouble with the law and not easily able to wiggle out of it, that we really need to do better.
Thank you so much. Who's next?
I'll go next, but I need to stand.
Please.
So my back isn't anyone, hopefully. I'm Irene Morgan. I live on the Pole Road for 72 years. I have a disclaimer. I know there are bad folks out there and that they need to be incarcerated so that we are safe in the community, but I am not talking about those people when I speak this evening. 4 years ago, we were told to stand down and not oppose the jail, that it was a done deal, that it was a waste of our breath, and the ship had sailed. Well, as you know, since then, 2 taxes have failed, and we said no twice. So we have done a lot of, first of all, I'd like to thank Barry, because he was key in being one of those people on the council in the beginning who stood up and was courageous and said, no, we can do better. And I hope that we can educate more people in this regard. Because, I've been involved in nonprofits for over 30 years. And I've been employed by 2, and I'm founder of the Restorative Community Coalition 11 and a half years ago. I was a member of the task force for 2.5 years. So I've been doing a lot of research. I've always known that jail and prison didn't work. I don't know why. It just goes against my grain. And I knew something was wrong. So we researched and we dug and researched some more. And we've been researching our particular county jail system and politics for a long, long time. And it isn't something that you can just scratch the surface on. It goes down very, very, very deep. And we realized that there's kind of a game being played. And our people who go through the system are part of that game, and they are the pawns in it. The jails are here in the county. We have 2 jails. And the Division Street is often filled to only a third. There's 150 beds there, and I've heard the sheriff say that sometimes it's filled to only 50 people in that 150 bed jail. These are the bad people that our officials say that we are being kept safe from. These folks mostly are misdemeanors. They have not been arrested for violent offenses, and many of them are there, at least a third to a half are there because they can't afford bail. And we can do so much better. The Vera Institute, as Barry showed on this film, was already.
There it is.
Anyhow, the Vera Institute report needs to be read by everyone, from my perspective. They have all the solutions we need, and Bellingham is doing a great job with reducing their population. Already saved $1.5 million in 2 years. That's how easy it is, and that's what I believe we need to do. Thank you. So, thanks for letting me do it.
Okay, who's next?
Okay. Talk about you. Ready?
My name is George Whatcom. I live in Lynden, and I don't know how basic to address the question, but I'm looking for reasons how we deal with someone who has either committed a crime, or someone who's committed a crime. And it addresses what kind of crime. Is it a crime against? Is it harming a person in our society? Or is it not paying a tax or paying a bill? Or, what is it? I'm reminded of some Bible stories where a farmer who couldn't repay his debt to a bank. And the temple elite clapped these guys in jail and take the wife and children, put them in jail too, until they were able to pay. Well, if you're a farmer, how can you pay? And that's continued on through the Roman Empire, and it's happening even now today. So maybe the question is, why are we putting people in prison? Why are we incarcerating people? And are we doing the best thing in the long term for the society by doing so? There is such a thing as punitive justice and then restorative justice. There may be other forms of justice as well, but those two are really foremost. Restorative, of course, has to do with training, with giving a person the opportunity to succeed when they come out of incarceration. And then there's the punitive justice. They have done something to harm somebody in our society, and that certainly needs to be punished. But the stories I hear of what goes on in prisons, I can't see how on earth someone can go into an incarceration scheme and come out a better person. I just don't see it. Whether it has to do with the training that they receive there in jail, or just exactly how we go about making better people. I guess maybe I've gone on windy enough, so I'll give you the microphone.
Okay.
Basically, I'm going
Your name first.
Mark Pearson, live in Bellingham. Mr. Workman's comments and mine are pretty much the same. But I think something's going on with the United States compared to the rest of the world. We incarcerate so many more people than even countries everyone in this room would think of as incredibly oppressive. So I'm not sure exactly what the dynamics are. I tend not to blame people for much of anything but structures. So there's something funny going on in this country between our culture of, my dad was a Methodist minister, so I kind of get the right and wrong thing, but we somehow combine punishing people, which was a daily occurrence for me as a child. That's not a joke. And it didn't help, trust me. With economics, something's funny going on where we make money by punishing people in this country. And so I'm not, Whatcom County isn't unique. It's a part of the way we do things in this country. And I think we have to look at Whatcom County as either following along in this somewhat entangled dance between making money and punishing people, and see if we can't be a part of the nation that learns how to join the enlightened countries instead of looking more like Russia than Norway.
My name is Ronna Lurch, and I live in Emerson. Not a day goes by that I don't see something off the internet about the way another country or another city in our country has really solved the problem of incarceration and how to deal with people who break the law. So there is no lack of data out there for all of you to follow. Starting with the Vera report, who have great recommendations, which you could follow. No cash bail. There are bills in Congress for that. You can adapt that, and that would get all these free people who simply are there because they cannot afford to get out. That would, of course, require some follow-up services and perhaps some people hired. Providing mental health services. A jail is not a mental health facility. I'm a mental health specialist. It is not the place for mentally ill. They come out way more damaged than they did by going in. The idea of restorative justice, our school-to-jail pipelines, could easily be dealt with in-house, kids getting sent to the principal like we did when we were little, when we kind of crossed the line. I don't think I ever did that. And when they sit down, all the families, the people, the kids, they sit down and they deal with it. And they get it back to ground zero. Ferndale is the absolute wrong place to take this jail out of the county seat unless there is an undercurrent underway to move the county seat out to Ferndale. To separate those two things is not very good thinking. It will cost everybody a ton of money, including the Sally Port that would have to be built down in Bellingham to get prisoners down to Bellingham. Attorneys would have to go out there. Families would have to ride the bus back and forth to visit. It simply is not a good place to think about putting a jail. I could go on for the rest of the time. Thank you so much.
You ready?
Mike Kaufman, I'm by the Noon and Kelly. I spoke at the Deming, so I don't mean to take up a lot of time, but it's, I think, good. I second Irene Morgan and her restorative justice group. I think they've done great work for our county and saved us from a lot of hardship to this point, and it's time for the rest of us to step up and take that ball and run with what they've done. I agree with the Vera report. Part of it says we've been sold that our jail is crumbling. We need a new jail. That is not true. The other part of it is 2/3 of the people in the jail are health-related issues. Mental illness, brain, you can go on, but it's health-related issues, not major incarceration problems. The court location to transport inmates from the county into the city will lead us up in costs. I'm a taxpayer, I have my eyes open, and in this country, as I've said the last time, we spend 2 and 3 times as much to get something done in this nation, and the result is the worst in the world.
So you got healthcare?
And what I see here is that there's a bigger issue going on with this. It's the money. Let's follow the money. The millions of dollars that were spent on that property and who owns property around it, what was done, what is planned. There's something going on there. They try to sell me to be a scared person in our society. Be scared of these people in the street. I'm not scared of the people in the street. What I'm sincerely scared of is the money and the power of money and the intimidation that's gone on in this county. Irene and some of these people have been intimidated, and it is happening, whether you want to believe it or not. Manipulation. There was a conviction of our powers to be that are pushing this with election fraud and election manipulation and other issues. I have no trust of our elected officials that are pushing this plan. We've said no twice, and what's the next thing going to be? How much is this money going to push? It started out 2,400 beds and $120 million. We're $100 million now on the table for, we don't even know what size. Let's say it was 500 beds that was given up last time on this thing. $1 billion in operating costs. Nobody's even saying where that $1 billion is going to come from to operate this jail. So if we got $100 million just to build it, $1 billion on the table to operate it. Seth Paul, sir, you asked us what would I vote for in the long run. If it's a 2/3 mix of people that don't belong there, then $70 million belongs in public health. You can have $30 million to rebuild the jail downtown. And when you put that proposal on the table, that's what I'll vote for. Thank you.
Thank you too for saying, here's what would work for me. I appreciate that.
My name is Brian Whatcom. My background and experience, I was a federal agent for 33 years. And I disagree with a lot that you say. You don't clearly understand until you see people that you book into county jails that some people are wrong. They're dangerous. They need to be incarcerated. A lot of the issues that you're talking about are issues to be dealt with by the court to determine who goes where and for how long. The taxpayer's responsibility is to provide the funding for the facilities. How many times have you gone to book a prisoner into jail and there wasn't room and you had to drive down to Lynden to put him in there? We need these facilities, and it's going to cost the taxpayers money. We've got perfectly capable, professional jail people that understand how it should be run, what kind of facilities they need to keep the people safe. You don't want those people running around on your street, burglarizing your house because you didn't have the capability to hold them where they belong.
Who's next?
Hi, I'm Brian Estes from Bellingham. I just wanted to second the efforts of the Incarceration Prevention and Reduction Task Force and VERA. I think a number of their recommendations should be really front and center going forward with who should be in jail. I also, secondly, wanted to mention...
I'm just talking.
Okay. I also wanted to just kind of underscore the interdepartmental nature of this issue. It's not just all within the Sheriff's Department. I mean, the courts, Whatcom County, the prosecutor's office, public health, the GRACE program, all of them play a really important role in kind of moving forward on these issues. So I know the Justice Committee going forward will consider, all the different actors and how they really have an integral role, all of them working together to move forward on this. Thirdly, I just think our mental health and drug courts are really not operated nearly as effectively as they could be. I know in the case of drug court, it doesn't meet best practices. I would encourage the committee to look at some of the administrative, political, fundraising, and operational constraints that those two therapeutic courts operate in Whatcom County. And I think there's much that can be done to significantly expand the number of people that are able to go into those facilities. And finally, I can't underscore the importance of the alternative to cash bail. 60% of the people in the jail are there simply because they're arrested. And if you take a look at that, that could considerably lower the jail population. Thank you.
You want to speak? You guys are in the back. Thank you. right there?
No, I'm sleeping, but I live here in Lynden. Saturday morning, my nephew was murdered down in Salem,
You need to
Oregon.
speak up.
Yeah,
Hold it
but-
right next to you.
Put the mic right next to you.
Saturday morning, my nephew was murdered in Salem, Oregon. And, you know, I hear people talking about the mental health problems. Yeah, they need to have kind of a tier system. A lot of the murders that are taking place today are drug related. The perpetrators, they're so callous, you know, that there needs to be early intervention. Because so many times by the time they get arrested, you know, they're beyond help. You know, people who are, if it's a non-violent crime, you know, there can be, you know, like in those days, you know, like the work camps, make them work. And, you know, and people who are really dangerous, they need to be away from society. Thank you. Do you want to speak?
Rather than you leaping back and forth, I'm just going to suggest, would you like to speak, sir?
You might time to run, you want some more time?
No, let everyone will get a chance first before anybody speaks twice.
My name is Carol Frazee, and I guess my concerns are, and I've only just skimmed over the Vera report, is that, you know, if we did build a big jail, that it would be filled. And I don't know if that's just hearsay or if that really would occur, and that the people with mental health issues wouldn't get the help they needed. And as far as my hopes for a better solution, making sure that we have programs that allow the prisoner or the incarcerated to learn basic skills and really get the skills they need, even basic, you know, social skills and the mental health they need. So some kind of program that combines all of that.
It's good to stand. My name is Paul Harris. I live in Lynden. I didn't have any idea what to expect this evening, but I'm really sorry to hear so much anger. I agree with this gentleman right here that some of you, it's very easy to hear in your voice you're angry. And anger really never arrives at good solutions. The last election was an overwhelming surprise to many. I took the time to ask quite a number of people who voted against the jail as was most recently proposed, how many of them had ever been inside the Whatcom County Jail to tour it, to see what is there. 90% had never seen the Whatcom County Jail, had never been in any kind of incarceration facility of any kind anywhere. Found it a little bit hard that they could make a real good decision on what needs to be done when they had never even seen the facility. Sadly, I have an acquaintance who has been both in the Whatcom County Jail and in state prison. And he said to me that if he was ever arrested again, he would beg the judge to be sent straight to prison. He says, I don't ever want to spend another day of my life in the Whatcom County Jail. And I asked him, I said, why is that? He says, the facility is so far gone. He says, did you feel like a dog? I said, you talk about the facility, the way you were treated. No. He said, the facility. He said, I was treated fine. But he said, in prison, he says, at least you feel like you're in a facility that is built to to make you feel like you're human. We need to do something. I have studied jails a fair bit myself. The idea of constructing a jail vertically or remodeling one that is vertical is not a good use of money. It is not a good exercise of efficiency. So the two questions, what are my concerns? We need to do something, but I think rather than just doing something, we need to do the right thing. My hope for a better solution will be that people won't be quite so political and so angry. And I'm sorry I heard that some this evening. I'll close for now with this thought. I forget which person it was that said they had no faith in our elected officials. I've not been paid to be here. I've not been told what to ask or what conclusions to come to. But I'm going to stand behind the politicians that are in the room. I'm thankful that we've got an executive that is willing to be here after having worked all day. I'm thankful that we have a sheriff who's worked all day and he's here. That ought to tell those of you who are not too happy with our elected officials that they care, they can be home sitting and watching TV. We have got good people as a sheriff and a county executive. They had no idea I was going to say this. They didn't ask me to, but it's the truth. So for those of you who are sorry that you don't have any faith, maybe you need to do a little bit of soul searching. If we can all work together, we can get something done that will please most of us.
Thank you. So I think that I want to go back to the ground rule about no wrong answers. Because everybody has a right to say how they feel and what they think. And it is also a good thing that we're here expressing really different points of view. That is the heart of what makes us a great democracy, is that we have differences of opinion. So I think it is, like, I just really want to appreciate the differences that have been voiced here. And just and to your last point, sir, that spirit of, that working together and hearing all these voices, we're going to come up with a better solution. I do believe that. I think that is exactly why we're sitting here. So to your point, sir, yes, indeed. Okay. Do you want to talk?
No, I'm here
To listen? Okay. Is there anybody who has not yet had a chance to speak who would like to have a chance at the mic? Are you sure? Okay. So, in that case then, what I'd like to do is go ahead and turn the mic over to our council members and see if you have any things that you would like to hear more about from the folks who've spoken, or things that you'd like to, go a little deeper on. Yes?
I think this would be a good opportunity, if Stephen, if you're willing, as you did up in Deming, to kind of go through some of the work that the Incarceration Prevention Task Force is doing, and so we can get an idea to the public, just the things that we're accomplishing there.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
My name is Stephen Gockley. I am a member of the Incarceration Prevention and Reduction Task Force. I am the chair of one of our three subcommittees, the Legal and Justice System Subcommittee. We also have a Triage Center Subcommittee and a Behavioral Health and Substance Use Disorders Subcommittee. You can read our reports online on the county website, and I encourage you to do that. There are periodic reports, there are minutes of our task force meetings, there are minutes of each of the subcommittee meetings, and probably more materials than you could carry in one truck attached there as background information that we've studied. I'll just summarize what the three subcommittees have been working on, and we are now formulating work plans for 2018-2019. We'll be coming out with an annual report probably July, which will flesh out a little bit those work plans and have a bit of a retrospective look also. The most urgent charge from the county council when the ordinance was passed to establish the task force was to focus on a triage center, an expanded triage center. You saw the photo of the Division Street facility where this is going to be located. We're going to expand, probably breaking ground. How soon, guys? Summer? Yeah.
It's under study.
County Executive could give us when we're breaking ground.
Should be going out to bid late summer, break ground, and it's a 6 to an 8 month project, but all things government take a little bit longer, so I would anticipate late next year we'll be able to open it up on the triage center.
I think Tyler has guaranteed that, hasn't he?
To the best of our ability, we
Yeah.
have. We still have permitting to do with the city of Bellingham. We have land use issues we have to deal with. As with all projects, that's where time can get eaten up very quickly.
Right.
We have architect under contract, and they're working daily on it at this point to be able to deliver the project as timely as possible. But I'm not going to make any problems. The deputy executive did.
Okay. Just as background there, the purpose of that is to expand the capacity of the criminal justice system to those people in acute need of treatment, either for mental health issues or substance use issues. A lot of times, law enforcement reported to the task force people really were not in any shape to be in the jail. They needed to be taken into custody, and they were either, the alternatives were the jail, the triage center as it existed, or the emergency department at Peace Health St. Joseph. None of those were great alternatives. Law enforcement got out of the habit because of the limited capacity and the limited programming of using the triage center, so it became a choice, not a good one either way, between the jail and the emergency department. So the triage center was a step to more appropriately direct the needs of a lot of people who were picked up in the county and provide appropriate, at least short-term interventions for their health-related needs. So we're going to have 16 beds on the mental health side of that new facility. We're going to have 16 other beds and possibly some shorter-term ability to treat and supervise people on the substance use disorder side of that, which will be a market expansion of capacity. It'll relieve people from being dumped at the jail when they're not in any shape to be there in a safe way, either for themselves or for law enforcement. It'll stop them from being let off at the emergency department, where the resources are limited for that need and not really appropriate to the individual. So we've made great progress, and we're within sight of a new triage center, which will make a big impact on how we treat people who are obviously in a state of acute impairment at the time that they contact law enforcement. The Behavioral Health Committee is chaired by Ann Deacon in our county health department. They have been concentrating on developing an intervention for people who are common users of the intervention systems, law enforcement, mental health, and substance use. They've put together a program they're calling the GRACE program, ground level response and coordinated engagement. Heather has coached me through that, and I appreciate that. It's an awkward acronym. It's not so awkward a program. They had a request for qualifications from county agencies to coordinate that. I think they're moving forward and hope this summer to launch that. What they'll have is a hub agency that will coordinate services for a lot of different services called the spokes, which will range from, again, longer term mental health treatment, substance use treatment, hopefully some temporary or affordable housing, perhaps some employment issues, family reconciliation issues. There will be a whole plethora of social services spread around to serve GRACE participants. There will be a coordinated plan of services so that hopefully there will be fewer cracks for people to fall through, fewer gaps to allow unmet needs to fester. So it's a thoughtful, deliberate attempt to coordinate non-jail services for people who frequently come in contact with law enforcement, and again, for whom there have been limited options for interventions. Lastly, my subcommittee, the Legal and Justice System Subcommittee, has benefited from involvement from Sheriff Alfo, from judges from the Superior Court, District Court. Bruce Van Glupt is here, Administrator of the District Court, and many of the municipal courts, trying to coordinate a way to respond to what really was the heart of many of the Vera report recommendations, including the primary one, which was to institute a pretrial risk assessment instrument, a scientifically validated tool that allows us to predict with fair confidence both the likelihood of returning to court if one is released pretrial and the likelihood of not committing another crime while one is released. And those of you who have read the Bureau report will probably have had jump out at you the single data point that's most compelling to many of us on the task force, that almost 60% of the people in the jail at any particular time are in a pretrial status. They have not been convicted, and many of them are low income because for Superior Court, the only option that the judges have on arraignment is to set bail or to keep them in jail. When bail is set, many low-income people can't afford it, and there were no other alternatives. So we're hoping it's a national best practice. We were on this even before Vera gave us a hearty hurrah to charge forward further. It's a national best practice to try to make a valid instrument that will predict the ability to release people pre-trial. So we're going to do that. We're working on that right now. We have a meeting. We had a meeting today, preparing for a meeting on Wednesday. We have a consultant from Washington State University, a criminal justice professor who works in this field. She's going to come over on Thursday and begin advising us on how to do that. And we're not just going to hope for the best when we release people. Releasing people pre-trial will require some sort of monitoring service to make sure that they stay in touch, that we get them back and can complete the process. So we're working, Bruce's office already does both probation and pretrial supervision for district court, where they're making some innovative steps in that direction, and for Bellingham Municipal Court, where they have made a lot of progress on pretrial release and monitoring, and some of the other municipal courts. Superior Court is very interested in this as well. So that's the package that is closest to us, most immediate on our work plan in my subcommittee, to have a solid, reliable pretrial risk assessment instrument that we can use, and then to have the capacity, both personnel and technology, I guess I would say, to monitor people when they are out of release. And so I think if you look at those things, it's a package of fairly robust interventions that will either prevent people from being funneled into the jail for lack of alternatives, or to intervene before they would even be going to jail. So that's what our work has been, and most immediately right now is. We'll be plowing ahead on each of those projects for 2018, and a couple other things probably a little little further out on the horizon. But there's a lot of work going on, a lot of very, very smart and caring people on the task force and assisting the task force in its work. We have great cooperation from public officials, and I think this is a mission that we're all pretty much together.
Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you for that great briefing. Council members? Mr. Bird?
I have a couple questions. So, and I'd love just to be able to ask a question, and then anyone who's interested to be able to give whatever feedback that comes to mind. To start, I'd like to know if we built a smaller jail and didn't come back to taxpayers and ask for an increase in any kind of taxes, but cash flowed it out of the existing revenue, would you be opposed or in favor of that? Where would you stand, Eric? And how would you feel about that?
Good question. You want us to do that?
What's that?
You wanted to test out the yeas and the nays?
No, we just like to know. I'd like to know.
If you could say your thoughts, I'd like to know what your thoughts are in regards to that.
How would that work for you? He phrased it beautifully. Yeah.
That's a good question, and it really is about changing the way we look and think about and plan for incarceration. And that these are people, they haven't all started out bad, and jails don't help them get better. So I think smaller jail, no taxes, we as local taxpayers will pay. We'll pay for the upkeep, we will pay. We pay your salaries, we pay, and we will pay for a jail of any size. And apparently the cost of the jail here in Whatcom County, the per bed is beyond what I read and hear about any other jail being built anywhere. So.
Thanks for the question.
Councilmember Byrd, your question. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. Your question was about, too, that the cost of operating the jail would be included in that, kind of prorated. And no, that's not what you're saying? Because I'm trying to understand what... Can you say the last part of your question?
I just want to know if we didn't come back to taxpayers and we could build a new facility, it would have to be smaller, but where would people stand? What were their thoughts on that?
So just a smaller jail?
Yeah.
Okay.
Without an increase in taxes?
Without an increase in taxes.
A smaller jail is better than what's there now. I don't think people mind being taxed. I don't mind being taxed. What I mind is how it's spent. Because without taxes, you have nothing. So I'm not opposed to a tax. I think the sales tax was the best option because everybody pays a sales tax, not everybody pays property taxes. So I think if you went for something smaller, that's better than trying to resurrect what's dying downtown. And I think you would get most people that would feel comfortable in going with the property that has already been purchased, because there was an extensive amount of research done on sites that were available at the time for purchase. And the one in Ferndale was the site that was chosen for a goodly number of reasons, one of which was access to as many different police departments and sheriff's offices as possible. Whereas some of them were finding difficulty. Take, for example, Sumas, if they've got to drive all the way to Bellingham and they've only got one guy on duty, that causes a problem. So having something in Ferndale makes it more accessible, certainly, for other agencies besides just Bellingham Police Department.
Other folks in response? I'll go 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, thank you for the question, because I think it's the question that would have been better for you to ask in the beginning, because
most of the tension I saw was around emotion, and I'll just say one thing about that. Emotion is necessary for change, and for me, justice and injustice are pretty emotional issues. So whether it comes across as anger or frustration or just excitement, I don't really care, but we need emotion. But it shouldn't overwhelm our rational conversations. But this issue, I saw people conflating prior to this meeting the need for a high-quality jail with a large jail. And as soon as you separate those two issues, I haven't met anyone or heard anyone, and I've heard a lot of people with too much emotion for me often, who are against the large jail but would do anything to get a high-quality jail. So I think it's precisely the vision to make sure we get what our citizens need while we simultaneously work to lead the nation on not unnecessarily incarcerating our citizens.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks for the question, Mr. Bird. I appreciate it. In the beginning, I thought a new, smaller jail was probably the best thing. But as we have researched more and more, and yes, by the way, I have been in many jails and prisons, Mr. Harris, and the current county jail, and the work center. And but after we've done some research, and people that have been inside the jail who are builders and concrete people have said the jail is not as bad as it is being said and being portrayed. So I have come to the point of believing that we could, and as I heard the undersheriff speak the other day, we're going to have to move some of our folks to a different location in order to remodel. So let's not do a halfway job. Let's do it right and improve the jail. And when we take away 50% of the people who don't belong there in the first place because they are not violent people, as another person said here, they are pre-trial, and they can be put on electronic home monitoring like the city of Bellingham is doing with their folks. There's so many more things we can do to reduce the population in the jail, and then it won't be overcrowded. We can have more room to do classes and expand things, and we have a building, I believe it's ours, out at the airport that's sitting empty. I was out there just a month ago. The sheriff could move out there and we could expand the jail even more into the basement. So there are so many more things we can do. And to think that we have to spend over $100 million is just ludicrous. We can save that money. And I know I don't do county math or DOC math or anything else, but I have been in business. I know that when you save money, and we can spend it in other places. And it needs to go into programs, it needs to go into housing, it needs to go into mental health and treatment and substance abuse treatment. We have all the things we need. It's being done all over our country. So why don't we introduce some of those things here more? And I just want to say that there are folks in our community that will say we have all these things. Yes, we do. We have lots of programs in Whatcom County. We have lots of them. They're token in comparison to what we need for the people that need the services. Thank you.
Thank you.
So my question would be, how are we disassociating a new jail from the funding needed, as this previous speaker just mentioned, to really scale up our therapeutic courts? There would definitely be a pretty significant cost to that. So I think just talking about a very much smaller jail reducing taxes is just really a partial way to look at this. I think people would support a tax increase if it involved really ramping up the therapeutic services that a lot of people in our community that shouldn't be in jail. So I would like to couple those concerns not being coupled up.
Thanks. Anybody else on
Could I just add one thing? I'm here to listen, but I just wanted to provide a perspective on one issue. And I'm speaking, as the sheriff, I'm speaking as a member of the Incarceration Prevention Task Force, and I'm speaking as a parent of a child that's going through the criminal justice system, that's been incarcerated multiple times, and has mental health and substance abuse issues. So I'm kind of familiar with what everyone's concerns are. But in that facility we have now, we're going to be spending $4 million over the next year and a half to replace doors that the inmates can kick open. We're going to be spending money over the next 3 to 4 years, up to $9 million, taking care of some really severe safety issues in terms of fire suppression that needs to be taken care of. But no matter what we look at now under that footprint, we are doing nothing to provide the space that's needed to treat people that have to be in jail. There's no other alternative in the mental health system to house them. People with severe medical issues and people with substance abuse issues that come in there. These people have to be closely monitored, and the only place we have to keep them is on the first floor of the jail, and that is a very noisy place. It's a very busy place. It goes 24 hours a day, and I'll tell you, I think we're aggravating existing mental health conditions. So whatever we do, we need to take care of having a place to securely confine those people that are ordered by the court to be there. We have no option of letting them out and putting them in a triage center. Some of them are dangerous. Some of them just have dozens of failures to appear in court, and judges aren't willing to let them out. That needs to be incorporated. And I agree with most of the criminal justice policy reforms, but we got to be careful not to confuse that with what's needed in a building. So, thank you.
Anybody else on this one?
I think everybody has right points. This is not something that this way is all right and this way is all wrong. I think these are all the issues we are facing. Means that the work incarceration task force has been doing was very important and has been taken care of in a quite aggressive manner. And I think that's a very good thing, and it has opened eyes for a lot of people who were not familiar with that there are other alternates. What we have been doing for the last 30, 40 years was the norm, has become that's how it is going to be. And that's how we have become the most incarcerated nation. I grew up in India, and 1.2 billion people. I mean, I'm not trying to compare, but I have seen a different way of punishing people or different way of reforming people. And they don't have, even with that population, their jail population is less than American jail population. The other part is that the question Mr. Bird has asked is good. Is the tax the issue? I don't think so. I think that question was very good from the perspective that is it that we are opposing the jail because of the money? I don't think so. I think talking last 4 years to people, it's the components of the jail and the parallel pathway for the jail reforms or mental health and behavioral health programs. So what I'm coming to is that the current jail. I'm an engineer. I've spent 30 years doing large projects and buildings myself. We can fix it. If we know we will end up spending about $20 million, but we will still have the same jail. We will still, that will be a kicking can down the road. What will happen 10 years from now, another set of people, group of people will say, we need a new jail. And it will be twice as expensive, and the need is not going to go away. Okay? So I really see every time I vote to approve money for the current jail improvements, I feel really bad. It's a good money being thrown after bad money.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's where I'm saying we have to revisit that. What are we going to get over next 20 years? Not that we can solve the problem this time and then let the next guy worry about it. I think we do need a capital facility of some form and shape, and that's where we should come to consensus.
Thank you very much. Did you have another one? We'll take turns.
Yes, Ron, did you have a comment?
I was just going to make the comment that apparently many people commented that the changes and the improvements in the current jail needed to start 20 years ago. That's when people started talking about it. Had that been done, we would actually have a facility that could take us through the next step. Now it just looks like a huge liability, but we still have to do it. We have to make this current jail safe for the people who reside in it.
So the Vera report, aside from asking the question about pretrial, getting that pretrial thing, really figured out, the other question they said that we need to ask the community is who belongs in the jail? What's the threshold that we feel is worthy of incarceration? I'd like to hear from you all and what you think about that question.
So who needs to be in our jail?
There's been some very good discussions about mental health issues. And I think that we need to separate mental health issues from criminal issues. Some mental health issues do commit crimes, but they're not necessarily criminals. They need to have a facility where their issues can be dealt with because they're not necessarily the same issues that people get locked up for. And so I think that we need to think about, and we have to separate it. But the mental health issues have to be dealt with.
You have a thought?
Always have a thought.
I can see.
We see so many big crimes. We see, reading the paper this morning of a young man who got $1 million away from his mother who had Alzheimer's. We hear of people that do crooked deals but have good lawyers. It's really hard. And then we see the people who were raised without much hope and don't have very charming personalities, and they get arrested and kicked and put down and insulted and all again. And so it is just extremely hard for me to say who belongs in jail.
I have no idea who belongs in jail. I try to be scientific, so my question would be, what is the evidence that what kind of jail gives the society a better outcome? Clearly, if you lock people up and they never come out, that definitely protects society. But if you're not going to keep them in there forever, I just need to know, are we all going to be better off or worse off when they get out? I was in the Dallas County Jail as an inmate for one evening, and I was an ER physician. I was a resident at Park County at the time. It was pretty interesting. I actually sat in the jail cell with about 10 other guys while a class was going on, taught by one of the inmates, teaching the other inmates how to extract drugs from over-the-counter inhalers to make sellable injectables. So they're definitely learning a lot while they're in jail. Is that good for society or not?
I was a faculty member at Whatcom Community College teaching nursing when Crystal Day was murdered by her husband. Now, that was a person that probably needed to be in jail. Although he was apparently heavily into tweaking on methamphetamine at the time. So we have this mental health issue that comes into play here. However, there are things called personality disorders, and that's the sociopaths and the psychopaths. And these are people who do not present to mental health facilities with a problem because they don't see themselves as having a problem, but they are studied because they get in jails. And they are seriously studied. We know a little bit about the psychopath and the sociopathy. So who does need to be in jail? I think I'll agree with Mark that it depends on the evidence. But who does not need to be in a jail to be further wounded and harmed by what happens are the addicted. And to that I say, we are a pharmacologically oriented society. We made this problem, our society did. Or shall I say the money in our society, the pharmaceuticals. We are also an incarceration society because of the money. We just need to get away from those concepts and constructs and think of people who harm others as people and work on a one-by-one, case-by-case basis.
So,
Say whatever you want.
Your
Questions on the floor.
your question was, who should decide who is incarcerated versus not? Is that correct?
No, I didn't say who should decide. I said the Vera report said that your community, that's one of the first questions your community needs to answer is, what is that threshold? Who belongs in the jail? And I think it's a very valid point to ask the other question, who doesn't? Because I think that's what we're getting to.
Okay, so the question is who belongs in jail?
Yeah, and who doesn't. Yeah.
I think we need to be careful, if not today, but certainly in the future, that we're careful that too many people are trying to decide those standards. I think that needs to be maybe most properly left with the courts, left with legislatures, as opposed to so watering something down that it comes into community people deciding who should serve terms and who shouldn't. That's a slope I think we ought to be very careful of, that we have a good structure in place to make those decisions, as opposed to every little interest group having too much influence.
So my name is Eric Ritchie. I'm in the Whatcom County Prosecutor's Office. I'm currently the Chief Criminal Deputy Prosecutor, and I want to say that I think this issue is not as hard as many think. I think that it's that people who are committing low-level offenses, such as possession of drugs, and especially small amounts, those people should not be in our jail. I think that the people who are dangerous, and those can easily be defined by the courts and by the prosecutors, the dangerous folks need to be kept in our jail to protect the community. I think that people who are the low-level offenders, they need treatment, and that's what I think. Well, that's what I think needs to happen.
Anyone else on this question?
I'll give it a stab.
Okay.
Mike Kaufman. At the Deming meeting, I said that one of the things about it when you're out shopping and doing things, and there's people on the street corner looking for money, and to me, I want to know that my society has the infrastructure to help that person. That person has somewhere to go to get food, get some education, to get a roof over their head, and get the services that are needed to set that person on the right path. If in the long run they choose not to go on that path, and maybe then choose to be the person that they are, that we would deem a detriment to society. And I'm not sure how to say that in the words, but I'm feeling good that my community is putting the services forward and someone chooses not to take that help. Then maybe we got some issues there. and a different way to deal with.
It seems that there are a number of people that need treatment that could be in a therapeutic court environment that would not be in jail. They wouldn't necessarily be on the street. They could be home with a monitoring bracelet. They could be in some kind of residential or treatment facility. And I think the Incarceration Task Force is also coming up with a risk assessment model that addresses that as well. So there's definitely professional judgment. But I just think it's not a question if you're in jail or you're somewhere else on the street. No, there'd be varying forms of interrupting somebody's life so they get the help and treatment that they need. And I'm just wondering, can you talk about the Incarceration Task Force's risk assessment model that they're working on? You might have mentioned that earlier when I was out here.
Yeah, I did mention it. I don't have much more specific that I can say. We're right at the beginning of that.
It sounds like that's something that probably people would be interested in seeing. And
I would add a couple of other thoughts to that, and that is that one of the things that has impressed me on the time the task force has been working on all this is these are much more complex questions than we often think of. When Vera points out to us that 60% of the people in jail at any one time are pre-trial, they're not convicted yet. I've heard people say, well, great, we can reduce the incarceration rate by 60%. Well, no, some of those are in on homicide charges. There are some very risky people in that pre-trial. So, there are multiple factors and you're trying to pick and choose which amongst that group. I'll also point out what I think we all know from our own lives and from our own interest in public affairs is you can't just say, well, this person has a mental illness, we'll treat them instead of incarcerating them, because you can't force mental health treatment on somebody who's not an active participant and engaged in that treatment. So we're going to have some fallouts there. There are going to be different people who are receptive to that kind of treatment, and even if that is the principal reason they're embroiled in the systems. So trying to tease out who is who is extremely difficult. And so the council in its ordinance to the task force asked us to follow best practices, to assess whether we're using best practices, and if not, propose better practices than we have. We're trying to do that. And then the last thing I'll say, and I'll shut up, is in response to Mary's question, I don't think we're going to know very soon. What we might do in the realm of pretrial risk assessment is we might have a pretty good guess who we can release, but we're going to have to monitor the data on that and make sure that we were right. And it may take us a couple of years and tweaking that a couple times until we know these people don't need to be in jail. We've got a way to weed those people out and redirect them. But I don't think we're gonna know that in a concrete way that will allow us to say, 500 beds, 1,200 beds. I think this is a process that we're in. I agree with the comment that we probably should have set out on this road 20 years ago, but we're where we are, and there are some things we can't force in this process.
Thanks so much. So, I think Councilmember Bird, just wondering, you want to comment on that? And then I think Councilmember Bird, you're next for your question. And I'd also just really like to invite people who would rather to have an opportunity to speak. Some of you really haven't given voice, so I do hope you will.
I'd like to respond to Mary's question. Who belongs in our jail? I don't know either, but I've also been working with people who go in and out of the system. We mentor and we advocate and we coach people. And I've been in court many, many times, and I've said prayers on the way to court with my people. I've held them while they cried because they have to go to court one more time. And then there's another continuance. And then there's another continuance. And we say another prayer and reply some more. And they really don't know what's going to happen. And the trauma that these folks face every time they go to court is something I think most of our society does not understand until you are in it. And I believe that our court system and our justice system is creating some of this mental illness. We have mapped and we have interviewed dozens of people just recently, and this is the same thing that comes out over and over again. And you want to talk about anger? These folks are angry because they do not feel that they are getting justice. They are getting pushed and shoved and have to go and do things that if it had been approached differently in the first place, they would never be in this position. And I want to know, we have such an opportunity, and it's already been done in many states in our nation. Whole groups of people are going from different communities to Europe to find out how they're doing it. They don't even have fences around their prisons. They have a bridge that goes to town from an island in Sweden, I believe it is. Okay. These folks it's completely different there. So let's take some of these leads from these wonderful people that don't punish the way we do. It's really heartbreaking for me to go to court one more time with these folks. And by the way, I am not paid. I've been volunteering for a long, long time, and I really don't like when people try to think and say that we are not doing good work and that we are not giving our time. And you hear anger in my voice? So be it. But I know that we can do better. We are America, and we can do better than this for our citizens. Thank you.
I'm good at that. Okay, and I just want to also make sure everyone gets a chance
I
to
get
hear.
that. But for who should not be in jail,
Yep.
there is a blogger in our county who actually made a statement that our streets should be cleared and all of those people should be in jail. Thus, we need a large jail. So I work with the homeless population as well. We cannot do this.
Okay. You want to say?
Just a question.
Yeah.
I have a question for whoever might be able to answer, and that is, are we as a society satisfied with the results of the criminal justice system as it's now done? Do we feel we're getting our money's worth? Do we feel that we're improving opportunities and improving people as a result of that? How can we put somebody in jail and expect them to emerge a better person? I don't understand that. So the question is, are we satisfied with the results of incarceration? Anyone's welcome to answer.
It's a great question, and I'm really noticing in this whole conversation, like, what is the end result we're aiming for here? Not just like, what's the thing we're going to build, but what's the ultimate end result? I really appreciate that this group has brought it to that level of the question. So I think it's important.
And if you'd like to respond to that, or if anybody else would, that's fair too.
I agree. So in talking to people, what I have found is that a lot of people were really kind of on the fence when it came to how they voted. And at the end of the day, when they checked the box one way or another, it really came down to one or two issues that to them were really important factors. So my question is, would you share with me what that one or two issues was that was important to you and why it was important?
And I'd like to make a caveat here, which is if you've already said what it was, you don't need to say it again, just so that we can hear different, what hasn't yet been spoken, and from people maybe who haven't had an opportunity yet. So did you want to respond? Or you were next, and then I'll continue.
One additional thing that bothers me a great deal since I moved back to Washington is that we have the most regressive tax form here. And by making another high sales tax, that hits on the people who have to spend all their money, and pretending that people who rent do not pay property tax is just very unrealistic. And we really do have to do better, because we always come back to tax the poorest people. Our rating in the country is not good.
That's it, Allison. Am I hearing you right that it's you prefer the property tax over the sales tax? Or am I just taking, I don't want to take your words out, so just.
Every other state I've lived in, I have paid a certain, during our higher income years, we paid our income tax, and that worked out well. I do not complain. I pay my property tax here. It'll be coming out in a couple of weeks. And I would be willing to do it, but the sales tax is probably, to me, seems the most regressive.
Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Mike Chesek. I live over here in Lynden. I have a criminal justice degree. I graduated in 1999. And I appreciate all you folks coming down here. I'd like to see this movement over here. When I graduated, the whole concept of restorative justice, it was kind of just starting to hit the skids. And I think that's a lot of what kept it from passing last time's going on, was the two big jail concept. I think you guys have come a long way and get things going. I think the frustration. I think you folks are frustrated. It doesn't seem like your message is getting out, but I think it has. So I just going to throw that out there, because I've been kind of quiet and listening, just often encouraging.
Thank you. Somebody else to the question?
Actually, I want to address your question, which I thought was a really interesting question, one I ask myself pretty much every day. I'll just restate it. Are we getting what we want out of the criminal justice system? But for me, I think if we focus just on the criminal justice system, we're not going to find the answer. For me, the question, and this is a question I ask every day, are we getting what we want out of the medical system, the education system, and the criminal justice system? And I think if we, instead of pointing fingers or worry, but we think systematically and ask ourselves why, when compared with many other countries, are we paying more and getting less for all three of those major systems? I bet that we'll find a common answer. And I'm not going to try to give you the answer, because I don't know the answer, but the research I've done points in the direction of bigger size always has higher overhead and less flexibility to fit into the specifics of the neighborhood and the community. So I wish at some point we would convene ourselves as a county and look at those three things together, not to throw stones, but to actually ask systemic questions, because we can't afford the extra cost even at the low quality.
So there's two questions on the floor right now. What is it that we're trying to create? And any other thoughts about why you voted, if you voted against last jail, why you did
More
that?
specifically, what was the most important thing to you in your decision making?
Yeah, thank you. So any comments on either of those?
Thanks. My name is Lisa McShane. I want to answer Tyler's question. For me, the primary reason why I opposed this jail tax was I believed all of the good work done to reform the criminal justice system would either slow down, stop, or reverse. And that we would be the last county in America to build the big dumb jail and have very little, if nothing, to show for it. So it was my fear that the reform work would stop.
If I may. I haven't spoken this. We have the coalition. We have several programs that would affect the numbers in the jail. Folks need to be helped when they get in trouble. Many people just need. And I'm going to tell a story. We helped a woman in 2008. She had been in and out of jail for over a dozen times. She went to prison for 4 years, and she came back. She came to one of our meetings, and 6 of us said, "How can we help you?" And she was dumbfounded, and she wanted to know what we wanted from her. It certainly wasn't her success from her perspective. And that was the first time in all those years that anyone had ever asked her, how can we help you? A totally foreign concept for her. So it's so easy. We have all these successful programs in our country, and what we need is to bring them here and to fund them instead of funding a big jail, to fund the programs that really work. And Delancey Street in San Francisco is over 40 years old. They have an 85% success rate of taking people out of the jail, out of the prison system. We can do that here. I call it our Restore Life Center. It's so simple. It's housing, education, and employment, and I've added a third component, the Wellness and Recovery Center. Imagine that. Thank you.
Gentlemen, questions? A question?
Not really. I just wanted to add one of the items when we say that who should be in the jail and determining that system. There is one fatal flaw, and that is that one incident. If we release somebody and one incident happens, I mean, we have to face that as a society. So that's where you have to be very careful when we say, who should we release and how we release. If there is no follow-up system, that's what we are talking about. If there is no infrastructure or place where we release people and then we forget about them, that's not the answer. We must have follow-up services for every person, whatever their conditions are, either going to jail or in a middle or going into mental institution or services. There must be follow-up. Otherwise, we have way too many incidents. We hear later on, oh, so-and-so dropped the ball.
So what I'd like to know is, where do you get your source of information about the jail? Was it a website? Do you listen to blogs or read blogs? Was it the Herald? Is it Friends? Where's kind of your go-to source for this? Yeah.
Okay.
From the Herald here.
From the Herald?
Herald, thank you.
Yeah, let's just shout out from the Herald.
Truthout.org, New York Times.
Wait, sorry, nope. Gotta slow down. I can't write that fast.
Oh, you can write them all down? Okay.
I'm like, wow. I didn't even
So
read
there's
it.
New York Times, Truthout.org, Common Dreams, Irene. She sends articles out that she locates that I may not have come across. Northwest Citizen, definitely. Cascadia Weekly, yeah.
The county website. County website.
County website, yeah, publish things and
Research.
And research.
Other sources that people get their information from.
Bureau.
Bureau report.
Yeah. You guys.
You read all this?
You read all those?
No, I said I agree.
Oh, agree with Bill. Any others that people go to that haven't been mentioned?
Or if you'd like to reiterate a spot as well. I mean, I'm kind of curious where that one or two real big areas are that people get information, but please, I'm sorry.
Well, I think a unique experience I had was in speaking to the chief, I forget her exact title now, but the lady assigned with managing the SCORE facility down in the Seattle area, getting her perspective on incarceration, getting her perspective on vertical versus horizontal facilities. What's too small, what's too big. She was a great resource of balanced information, I thought, because number one, she doesn't live here. It was her perspective from down there. Right. So she wasn't trying to persuade me one way or the other. She was just sharing her viewpoint. And I consider that just as valuable as reading someone's column in the newspaper. In fact, probably a whole lot more so.
Do you want to say, do you remember her name or what her title was?
And I do not remember.
Her name is Penny. Penny.
Penny.
She has the last name.
I'll remember for you.
Yes,
I heard her.
Some people don't. Not everyone does nowadays.
I first met her at the facility.
At the which facility?
The SCORE facility.
Oh, at the SCORE facility
I
in
first met
Seattle.
her there.
Okay.
And then she was up here speaking at a public meeting, so I got to hear her a second time. And she was really objective, I thought. Instead of simply trying to promote this effort or that effort, she was saying, look at these kinds of things that are being found by people in the industry and businesses she's in. And what she's doing is not for profit. It was a very interesting perspective, some of the things that she had to say. Penny Martin. Martin. B-A-R-T-O-N.
Yeah.
The League of Women Voters had a debate on this last night.
Oh, the League of Women Voters. So that was your thinking. Yeah.
City Club.
Well, we're at that stage. We're going to just do a quick wrap up. If anybody has anything more they want to leave us with, we'd appreciate it.
I'd like to say thank you for the opportunity for the forum.
Absolutely.
I wish the county council would do a whole lot more of this on all kinds of topics.
Thank you. Great meeting.
So can I just say, if you have other thoughts or questions, just make sure on the bottom of your survey to write those down. Because I think we're going to try and put together an FAQ for coming up, things that people are saying that they want to know that we can provide to them.
Yes, and look to our website. Check in every now and then. We're going to be adding things as we get more public input. We want to post that and get the word out what the community thinks. But we really thank you all for coming tonight. I know it's you're missing your families tonight and everything, but we really appreciate you being here. And this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you so much.